Welcome back to another episode of SpitBallin. I'm your host, AJ, and this time alongside me, my co-host, Christian, is back. And on this episode, we will be talking about the major moves that have happened this past week in the NFL, especially the most recent transaction between the Bengals and Giants. We'll also be discussing some major contract extensions and options that were picked up during this week leading up to the NFL draft in Pittsburgh this year, and we will be going over our final mock draft Monday today, as the draft is only 3 days away, and it is time to get excited to see who your team may pick. You can listen to Spitballin at most places you find podcasts, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok under our handle at Pod Spitballin. That is at POD Spitballin. So, jumping right into it, we're going to start with the biggest news of the week. Dexter Lawrence getting traded to the Bengals straight up for the 10th overall pick in this year's NFL draft. I'm going to let Christian, our local Giants fan, take this one away, and I'll give my thoughts after. Christian, what do you think about the Giants and how this affects the draft and the future for both teams?
It's good for both teams. Dexter Lawrence, he obviously didn't want to be a Giant anymore. It was with money. It was also concerning the past year. He also, was saying a lot of bad stuff about the Giants and stuff. But I didn't expect them to get as much value as they did. Like the Bengals getting with the 10th overall pick. But it's big, and the Giants, they don't want to pay a nose tackle $30 million. I get it. The Bengals trading for him, they need studs, and Dexter Lawrence is definitely a stud. Might be a slight overpay for a team who doesn't have much else on defense, but it's practically it's the Bengals taking Dexter Lawrence 10th overall because the Bengals have not been able to draft well, at least defensively, the past 10 years.
Yeah, I completely agree with their draft past. Defensively, it has been very bad, especially looking at last year with Shemar Stewart. Hopefully, he can have a bounce back sophomore season. But yeah, Dexter Lawrence to the Bengals, a very interesting move. As you said, he asked out of the Giants. He didn't want to be there clearly. But from the Bengals' perspective, I look at it as it's a guy that'll be 29 coming this November. And you just look at the Bengals, you essentially could have had Trey Hendrickson and the 10th overall pick. And now you don't have Trey Hendrickson or that pick. You get Dexter Lawrence, only extend him for 1 year, $28 million. I feel like this is just going to be a whole kind of episode again, almost very similar to Trey Hendrickson's situation, where we could see Dexter Lawrence play a season for the Cincinnati Bengals and possibly on a new team next year. What do you think the Bengals are going to do from that standpoint, as it's a team that their window is closing? So I do agree with what you said in a sense of trying to hit on that pick and get a guy that could help you defensively. You're going for a guy that is proven. Even though he is coming off a down year, his down year would be career years for other guys in the league. So we'll hopefully see Dexter Lawrence bounce back for the Cincinnati Bengals. But what do you think? A team that their window is closing, you've now given up a pick that could have very much helped you win now still and have a good future outlook. And what do you think contract situation wise? You think this is going to be Trey Hendrickson all over again?
Yeah, it could be Trey Hendrickson all over again, but it's a different need that they've had. Trey Hendrickson, a pure edge rusher, he's okay against the run. Dexter Lawrence is one of the best run stoppers on the inside. Even if stats don't show it, he gets double team, he gets triple team, he clogs lanes, which is what he's always done well for the Giants. Everyone just considers last year a complete down year because of his sacks, but he's not a sack guy. He never has been. He's a run stopper. But the Bengals, it's not as bad of a trade on paper because, like I said before, for some reason they cannot draft and develop defensive players at all. Offense, completely different story. But defense, they can't develop anyone. And if they were taking anyone this year, it would have been a defensive guy.
Yeah, I mean, as we've emphasized, I think that is definitely the reason we see this trade happen, as they just want to get a proven guy and know that they don't have to wait for somebody to develop or just not be good and be a bust. But exactly what you did just say, it is just, it's definitely a need that they need. But, double team, triple team Dexter Lawrence with the New York Giants, if that then happens in Cincinnati, which it most likely will then, fans be upset? I think so, because you're looking at a fan base that just had the 10th overall pick with a very good offensive roster, at least, hoping that they were going to get something to boost that side of the ball, or even now what they need, boost their defense. and probably still be young. We'll have to see how the situation shapes out, just because I think it's a very interesting trade. And I've seen a lot of people say it's just crazy to think how close it has happened to the draft. It, it even could have happened on Thursday, which would have been even crazier. But sticking on that side of the ball, we do see, as we were talking about Trey Hendrickson, somebody that plays the same position as him at edge rusher, Will Anderson, with a 3-year, $150 million extension. The Texans picked up his 5th-year option a couple days before that and then extended him immediately, pretty much. He is now the highest paid non-quarterback all time in the NFL. I think this is a move that is great for the Texans because this guy is going to be a beast for his whole career. Really, I think I'm honestly surprised he didn't get paid more, to be honest. Obviously, you always just see them reset the market. He did get the next biggest money, so it's like he jumped somebody by a couple million. But I'm surprised he didn't get more money just because of how productive he is and how young he is. But I think it's a great deal for the Texans. We also did see them pick up CJ Stroud's 5th-year option, which I would expect to see him get extended. Not going in, he might not get extended going into this season, but he will probably be a very soonish extension, I would assume, and get paid top dollar, even though it's a quarterback that, I could see. I think skill wise, he's nowhere near Tua. I think he's much better than Tua. Like Tua was, he should have never gotten that type of money. But I think Stroud will be in the same situation where I don't think he really deserves top money either. What do you think about the Texans' moves on their young core right now?
Will Anderson, he's an absolute stud, like you said. Ever since he came to the league, I don't know why coming out of college there was concerns with him coming off the edge. He's so good, especially partnering up with Danielle Hunter. They had to lock in Will Anderson now before it got even more expensive. Like you said, he could have made much more money if they waited. And then CJ Stroud, I've said it before, I'm not the biggest fan of. I'm not the biggest fan of Ohio State quarterbacks. The way they develop, it's very weird. Because you go from throwing to 5 stars in college to, and then you go to the league. And it's like, he had a very good rookie year, but since then, he hasn't really found the rhythm that the Texans need. Like, the Texans had a defense last year that they could have won it all. And Stroud kind of fell apart completely against the Patriots. But the option had to be picked up. The Texans are going to be good again. It's just if Stroud can just find the rhythm that he did his rookie year.
Yeah, and as I brought up Tua last time, Tua got paid 4 years, $212 million with the Dolphins. I think it's just a very similar situation where it's two guys that exactly have shown promise, have all the tools kind of around them to be that elite quarterback. I can very much see Stroud he'll be getting more of this just because of inflation of contracts throughout the years. We'll see if he does get that type of contract, and if it is very similar to a situation with the Dolphins, if then it's looked back on as well. They should have never paid him that money, and it does not pan out. But another 5th-year option that was picked up was Bijan Robinson. This isn't major news. Obviously, what we just said about CJ Stroud, it's a guy that was going to get picked up, obviously. I think he'll get extended pretty quickly. And I think what will be very interesting, though, is what type of he gets. Obviously, being probably one of, if not the best running backs in the NFL since he's been drafted. We saw Kenneth Walker get 3 years, $43 million with the Chiefs after being Super Bowl MVP. Where do you think his range will be for the Falcons? Obviously, they're not going to let him walk, even though running back is looked at that position that you could let walk. But I would be shocked if he doesn't get $50 million on a type of deal. He has to be the highest paid running back, I feel like, in the league to make it, make sense. It wouldn't make sense to me if he doesn't get that type of money.
No, if he doesn't get hurt, he's getting record-setting money at the running back position. He's a guy that's been on the field his entire career. He's very durable. He's arguably the best running back in football. And the Falcons really, if they lose him, they don't really have anyone. So that's when he gets paid, it's going to be top dollar.
Yeah, and I guess one more move that we've actually talked about since we hit on the Falcons there. The Falcons did bring in Jawan Taylor, who was the
Oh no.
former Kansas City Chief, who, when the Chiefs signed him, I said multiple times I thought it was a crazy overpay. He very similar to Dan Moore, where those two guys just never produced on the teams they were prior. And then you saw Dan Moore get paid top dollar with the Titans and Jawan Taylor get paid top dollar with the Chiefs. And guess what? They didn't produce. So Jawan Taylor, though, now to the Falcons to block for Bijan, block for Penix and Tua. We'll really see what ends up shaking off there, but only gets $5 million. So a big pay drop compared to what he got on his last contract. But that is pretty much it for the news that's really happened in the league. I guess one more fifth-year option we could also talk about is Peter Skoronski with the Titans getting picked up. That was also something that was just obviously going to happen. He is one of the best young guards in the league right now, and I think he'll be getting paid top dollar as well once he gets extended. So we are going to head into the final mock draft Monday today, and this is mock draft 3.0. We think we mock draft and the second mock draft, we wanted to have fun. We wanted to obviously
I'm
pick the
excited.
obvious picks. We were not going to have Mendoza going not number one. Obviously, that's that's going to be our top pick this draft. But this mock draft compared to 1.0 and 2.0 is we know it's the final one before the draft. So we are giving our honest and exact picks. We're not having fun this time in the sense of, oh, we think this guy will just go here because it'd be a cool move to happen. This is what we think will happen. So you can hold us to this and tell us who we got right, who we got wrong, and how crazy we were that we thought this guy was going to go there. Meanwhile, he went 10 picks later to a different team. So to start off the final mock draft Monday, we obviously have the Raiders taking Fernando Mendoza. We've spoken about him so many times in past episodes about going to the Raiders. I guess for the final time to speak about Mendoza, I think he is the perfect system quarterback that you look at his time in Indiana, how he did with Cignetti. He just went into the system, did what he was told in a sense, and won a national championship, won the Heisman, but also was able to be heroic in his own ways with his athletic abilities. I think having a mentor like Kirk Cousins is going to be amazing for him. It's a guy that has been around the league, has had highs and lows in his career, and just is a very similar type of person, I feel like, to Fernando Mendoza. So I think this will just be amazing to have him on the sidelines for Fernando. And you have a coach like Clint Kubiak, who you see what he just did with Sam Darnold. It's a very similar quarterback. Like if I had to compare Mendoza to a quarterback currently starting the league, Sam Darnold is right there, I'd say, to compare him to. I think that offense, having Genty, Brock Bowers, they bring in Jalen Naylor. You'll see if Jack Betch and Dante Thornton develop into anything. You still have Trey Tucker. I think that team will have a pretty successful season offensively. They might not put up so many wins, but I think as a team, offensively, and like for Mendoza as a rookie, he'll have a solid rookie season. What do you think about Mendoza to the Raiders?
It's a shock. No, I'm joking. I think you said it perfectly. Sam Darnold. I don't think I've ever seen anyone compare him to Sam Darnold. That's like a perfect example. I don't think Mendoza's anything special, but I think he can do what needs to be done to win football games, and that's really all you need at quarterback. So, I mean, it's surefire for the Raiders, to be honest.
Exactly, and what you just said, and what I emphasize, it's a guy that really isn't anything special, but he plays his role, will play that system quarterback type role, and I think be a home run pick here, hopefully for the Raiders. To the Jets now, who lost out on the Fernando Mendoza sweepstakes, and fans are very upset about that. Obviously, we have them going. We had them in between Arvell Reese and David Bailey between our last two mock drafts. And we are settling on Arvell Reese here to the Jets at number 2. I think it just makes too much sense for the Jets. It's going to sound to Jet fans annoying, but I think it's the prototypical the Jets are going to pick the wrong guy type of pick. Um, I think David Bailey should be the pick personally. I really hope they do take the pick, but from a trying to hit the pick right standpoint, I think it will be Reese just because they love the excitement of like the pure athlete he is compared to David Bailey, where he could play on the edge, off the ball at inside linebacker, and really be all over the place. I think Aaron Glenn would be very excited to use a guy like that on his defense. So we have Arvell Reese to the Jets. What do you think, Christian, about the Jets taking Arvell Reese at number 2?
You could flip a coin 10 times and you wouldn't know who they're taking. Like, this is our realistic mock, but they could take Reese, they could take Bailey. It's one of the two. It's not going to be anything else. But I agree with you. The Jets, not the best track record on picks. So if I were to choose, it would be David Bailey, but it looks like the Jets are going to take Arvo Reese.
Yeah, and a lot of fans want to look at it as it's just smoke screen and nothing to really care about. But the Jets did also cancel their visit with David Bailey, and fans believe that it's just because they have all the information they need on him. They don't want to waste a workout on a guy that they know so much about already, and they'd rather use it on somebody else, which is very possible. But I do think that could be kind of foreshadowing that they just aren't as interested as their fans hope that they are in David Bailey. But here at number 3, where the Cardinals are typically picking, we have our first trade here in a mock draft Monday. we have the Cardinals trading with the Kansas City Chiefs, pick 3 for picks 9 and 29. I think this would be a first round swap, seeing the Chiefs jump from 9 to 3, and they'd obviously have to give up a little bit more capital to get that third pick, which would be pick 29. And with the Chiefs now jumping to pick 3, we have them taking out of Miami Ruben Bain Jr. There has been a lot of rumors that they are extremely high on Ruben Bain. Spagnola is very excited about potentially acquiring him if they are able to trade up and get him, or even if he falls to them at number 9. Obviously, we have them trading up 2-3, though, to secure him and make sure that nobody else can get him. And I think this would be a home run pick for the Chiefs here because realistically, your edge rushing has been just not even, I don't think subpar describes it. It has been atrocious the past couple seasons. Karlaftis had a great rookie season, a solid second year, has not been good since. And I think getting Ruben Bain now off that edge is just going to, having Chris Jones in the middle and Ruben Bain on an edge will just make that defense so much more explosive. And I think this is where the Chiefs go up and go get their guy and make that trade to secure him and make sure no other team takes him.
Yeah, it's the Chiefs. They really like him. They just had a visit with him recently, a top 30 visit. They what it's looking like, they don't think he's going to fall to 9, and they really like him. They need a guy, especially since Chris Jones is he's not on the decline. He's getting older, and players degress as they get old. They need a stud on defense, like you said. Karlaftis is good, but without anyone else on the other side helping him, Ruben Bain can play inside and outside. He's that versatile of a player. I don't care about the short arms. I don't know why teams care about that so much. When a player's as good as him with a high motor he has, it makes sense for the Chiefs to want to trade. This is a Chiefs type of thing to do. They know what they're doing in the front office, and getting a guy like Ruben Bain is huge.
Yeah, and exactly. The short arms, I think, obviously not comparing him to Aaron Donald here, but that was a concern for Aaron Donald coming into the NFL. Look how his career turned out. So I think the short arms is just needs to get not overlooked because then obviously if he isn't good, it'll be like, oh, that team overlooked his short arms. But I think it just needs to get like if you want this player on your team, you cannot pass on him because of his short arms, is my point. At this
It
point,
just doesn't
you've
make
seen what he
sense.
could do. No, it doesn't. Like you saw what he did in the national championship. He was dominant. He was all over the place. And it just, if you want an edge rusher that'll exactly what you said, have a high motor and get to any quarterback, this is the guy to take, my opinion, in the draft. And honestly, I think the Jets should probably take him at 2. But as we said, I think the Jets will end up taking the wrong guy. And even if they take David Bailey, I think they should take Bain over David Bailey. But I just don't think the Jets are really in on Ruben Bain. They're in on those 2 other guys. And heading to pick number 4, where we did have Ruben Bain going last mock draft to the Tennessee Titans, off the board now since the Chiefs jumped ahead to make sure they can get him. I think the Tennessee Titans look at their offense and say, okay, Cam Ward had a very solid rookie season. We have Gunnar Helm at tight end, who we drafted last year and showed some flashes. They have a solid receiving core with DK, Iron Man. Really what they're lacking is after a couple of years since Derrick Henry's been gone is an explosive running back. I think Jeremiah Love in that backfield would be a home run pick to get that offense a little less pressure for Cam Ward, where it's just he has to throw the ball because they don't have a great run game. And he'll just be a highlight reel of a running back, I think, for this team.
Yeah, they're trying to put as much weapons around him as they can. Cam Ward, he showed a lot of promise for a team that was really bad. The Titans were really bad last year, and they showed a lot of promise with him. So they're getting a guy that can really help him out in the passing game, the screen game, the running game. It also helps out Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard as well. It helps those guys out. But it feels like a surefire pick for the Titans, to be honest.
Exactly, too. You would now have a 3-headed monster pick potentially in your backfield if you make this pick as the Titans. And realistically, for the Titans, they do also have Tony Pollard only for 1 more year, so he will be off the team most
That's
likely
true.
next year if they take Jeremiah Love. And Tajay Spears, I mean, he's shown flashes, but same thing. He's also ready to be a UFA next year. So I think realistically, you're not going to pay
Yeah.
either of those guys, especially Pollard with his age. You take Jeremiah Love and reset the running back position since then. Go get it. Easily a guy that could be a top 10 running back straight out of college in the NFL. And heading to pick number 5, the Giants, who now have a bonus pick coming up at pick 10, but staying at number 5, The Giants, I think we had them going Jeremiah Love last mock draft, but obviously no longer on the board. We've had them going Sonny Styles as well in our first mock draft, and we have them going with Sonny Styles here. You look at any John Harbaugh-led defense, they have had an elite linebacker on them. Roquan Smith, Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, the list goes on. Sonny Styles could be the captain of this defense for the next 5 to 10 years. And I think this would just make the most sense for the Giants. They would just love this pick because they very much need help in their interior linebacking core. And I think Sonny Styles is the guy for the job.
It's very true. Giants could with acquiring the 10th pick, it could go either way. I believe 5 and 10 they're going offense, defense, regardless. Best player available for both. And Sonny Styles here, they need a linebacker. They need a captain of the defense. They had Bobby Okereke, who was the captain. He kind of declined the past 2 years. So, and like you said, Harbaugh loves his linebackers. So Sonny Styles just makes the most sense.
Yeah, and heading to a team who lost their linebacker in Devin Bush, so we had them taking Sonny Styles, who we just, if you kind of see this mock draft too, the guys that we had kind of falling and having fun with, they're going where they should go now. So the Browns would not be able to take Sonny Styles like we had them taking last mock draft. The Browns here, I think you look at their team, they did bring in Quincy Williams to replace Devin Bush, but they really need help at the wide receiver position. Realistically, Jerry Judy's good, but he can't do it all on his own. Besides that, you have Cedric Tillman, who's shown flashes, but also hasn't been able to stay healthy the past 2 seasons. Isaiah Bond, not great. If you're going to throw Shador Sanders into the fire, officially start him week 1, I think you need to go get him a great playmaker out of Ohio State like Carnell Tate. Carnell Tate, I personally don't think is the best receiver in this draft class. I do think it's Jordan Tyson. Just we'll get to him later when the team that we have taking him takes him. But Carnell Tate, at the end of the day, is the best receiver. If you're not, if you don't want to be concerned about injuries, he has had the tape to show why he should go top 10 at Ohio State. Obviously, as we've talked about Ohio State quarterbacks before, he has had great quarterback play his whole career there. Shador Sanders, not probably as good as the quarterbacks that he's played with at Ohio State, but I still think this would be a match made in heaven for the Browns. You get now a great duo of Judy and Tate, and then you fill in that third receiver role with whoever you got, Tillman, Isaiah Bond. I think Carnell Tate staying in Ohio just makes perfect sense here and would be a very good pick for Cleveland.
Yeah, Carnell Tate, they need a receiver, especially if they're rolling with Shador. I don't know what they're doing with the quarterback side, but Carnell Tate, it makes most sense. I do believe he is best receiver in the class, just purely it's a big body down the field, everything. He gives everything you want out of a receiver, so he can really help out the Browns. It just depends how good Shador will be next year. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah, and that's really how most teams end up boiling down. It's you got to have the good quarterback. If you have everything around it but not the quarterback, you really can't do much. But heading to the Commanders, who do have the quarterback in Jane Daniels, at pick 7, we had them going with Caleb Downs in our last mock draft, and we are sticking with that pick. They need safety help. The rest of their defense is pretty sound. Their offense, they could use maybe receiver help, you could say, but they have Debo and they have Terry McLaurin. I don't think it would make sense for them. Running back, I definitely could have seen them going Jeremiah Love, but he's off the board at this point. So I think Caleb Downs, you've just seen what he could do at Ohio State. He is hands down the best safety in this class, and I think will possibly be one of the best safeties in the NFL, to be honest. I think he'll be very good if he goes to a team like the Commanders, having a coach like Dan Quinn, who's just a defensive guru. You saw what he's done his whole career as a coach on the defensive side of the ball. I think a guy like Caleb Downs, you'd be so excited, just the versatility of a guy that he could play the box, he could play up and out and guard any receiver, I think, in the league when they get to his zone. Even in man-to-man, I think he'd do pretty solid against most NFL wide receivers. And I think this is just a home run pick for the Commanders here because they got a safety that will be a guy on their team that will just consistently play well for the next couple of years.
Yeah, their secondary was terrible last year. They signed Nick Cross. He's nothing special though, so Caleb Downs immediately makes their secondary better. Their secondary was so bad last year.
Yeah, and heading to a team who also had a pretty bad secondary last year was the New Orleans Saints, and we had them going with Mansour Delane in our last mock draft, and we also had them staying with that pick here. It just makes too much sense keeping him in-house, in-state. I think from LSU to New Orleans would just be such a cool thing to happen, and it's almost like when Kenny Pickett went from Pitt to the Steelers. It's just that kind of pick, I feel like. But in this sense, it's also a need. They do need a corner desperately, and you have now him and Kool-Aid, who would be your best two corners. I would say would be a great corner duo to have. And Mansur Lane, hands down, is the best corner in this draft class. Realistically, I could see him going to a team maybe like the Giants if they don't think they need a linebacker. And Mansur Lane could really play man, play zone. He could do anything you really need him to do at the corner position. I think he'll be one of the better corners as we see his career develop through the years. I could very much see him, at my point, having a Devon Witherspoon, Christian Gonzalez type of development.
Yeah, he's the best corner in the draft. The Saints, Kool-Aid is actually coming into his own now. Surprisingly, I did not expect that when he came out of Alabama. But him and Mansour Delane should definitely be a major upgrade for the Saints, whose secondary was also very bad last year.
Yeah, and heading to now the Cardinals on the board at pick 9 after trading away pick 3 to the Kansas City Chiefs. We had the Cardinals taking Francis Maioga in all of our mock drafts at pick 3. As you know, he's not off the board right now. So I think that's why the Cardinals make that trade with the Chiefs. It just makes sense because they think they could get the guy they're going to take at 3 at 9 and get more value. So we have Francis Maioga going to the Cardinals at pick 9. It just makes too much sense because they desperately need tackle help. Whoever their quarterback is, obviously, I guess some news actually that we didn't cover, but isn't, I don't think that major in a sense because he will be on the team. But Jacoby Brissett in a contract dispute with the Arizona Cardinals. Whoever your quarterback is, though, you need somebody to protect them, and Francis, I think, is no doubt the guy to do it.
Yeah, they have Paris Johnson left side. They don't really have a good right tackle. So Francis, whether they stay at 3 or come to 9 like we have in the trade, they're taking a tackle. Francis just makes the most sense. He's best right tackle in the draft. And they need to protect the future quarterback that they're going to take, whether it's this draft later or next year, because Jacoby Brissett, he wants starter money, but he's not going to be the starter that much longer.
No, and I think realistically, as you just said, they could even address quarterback in this draft because they might not want to pay him at all then, and then that'll just kind of be Jacoby Brissett in Arizona just because exactly he's a guy that is up there in age and has shown that he is a good quarterback. I will say he had a very good season last year with the Cardinals when he had the job. It didn't turn out to wins. He had good individual stats, but it did
Yeah.
not turn into wins, and it just you just need to take a tackle though then to protect that quarterback of the future now. Into the Giants' new pick from the Cincinnati Bengals in the trade that sent Dexter Lawrence to the Bengals. We have, who, as you know, Christian said he thinks Carnell Tate is the best receiver in the draft class. I think it is Jordan Tyson, and we have the Giants taking Jordan Tyson here at 10. We debated a little bit if they would go double defense. We had if maybe Mansour dropped to them, but we just couldn't make it make sense that Mansour would drop to them, and same thing with Caleb Downs. So we stuck with them where we thought they would go to the Commanders, to the Saints. At that point, then the Giants need a receiver. Obviously, losing Wan'Dale Robinson to the Tennessee Titans in free agency. Malik Neighbors, hopefully, he's back for week 1. He might not be, so they need a guy right away, and it's, I think, going to be Jordan Tyson. Jordan Tyson, as I've said, I think should go first in the draft out of all the receivers. However, due to the injury concerns, we could see him even fall further than the Giants. They might take Kai Lemon over him then, and then the team won't draft him until way later. We'll have to see what happens because of that. Teams do let that happen a lot because of injuries. Obviously, Will Johnson being the main guy last year that happened to, and he fell out of the first round. I don't think Tyson will fall out of the first round. But Jordan Tyson, as a receiver, my comparison is Antonio Brown. I know that's a very lofty comparison, but just as a player, they are the same build. They are the exact same build, same height, very similar weight. And Jordan Tyson is exactly like Antonio Brown, where you can have him on deep routes, you can have him in, you can have him take a bubble screen and go 80 yards. He's a guy that can do anything you need him to do, and he does it extremely well. So I think Jordan Tyson to the Giants here would be an amazing pick for their offense. You now have Jackson Dart having Malik Neighbors and Tyson, Tyron Tracy and Scadaboo behind them. Tight end was a debate, but I just don't think Kenyon Sadiq at 10 would make sense. They do have Theo Johnson, so Theo Johnson being the last piece of those skill positions. But Jordan Tyson to the Giants here just would be a home run pick, and I think Giant fans would be very excited to get a lethal wide receiver duo of him and Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, it's not an accident that Harbaugh personally flew out to see him in a private workout this weekend because apparently, I don't know if it's true. I saw a report where the Bengals had this trade lined up a few months ago, and the Giants weren't even considering it, and the Giants called them back, and the Bengals still liked it. So it's not an accident that he just went out to meet Jordan Tyson. So it makes the more sense that he comes here. You say Antonio Brown, I think that's a crazy comparison comparing anyone to him. I would, but it makes sense. I would say he's more of like a Diggs. Jordan Tyson, he's the best route runner in the draft. Like, it's not even close compared to Cardinal Tate's good, but he's not a polished route runner like Jordan Tyson is. So with the trade they just did, it makes they need someone else besides Neighbors. They have no one.
Yeah, exactly. As you just said, they have nobody until Neighbors is healthy, and it just makes sense. You take your leader of defense, and then hopefully a guy that could be a leader on offense here. With two top 10 picks, the Giants now move on with their future and put the Dolphins on the clock, who we have the last of the top three receivers that people think are in this draft going to the Dolphins in Mekhi Lemon. Mekhi Lemon obviously has a bit of character concerns, I guess you could call it. Guys in the past that have had those concerns, you could say Kayvon Thibodeau, I'd say was the most recent one. Abdul Carter, I guess a little bit too, which kind of interesting the Giants took both of them when you think about it. Um, but Mekhi Lemon, I still think as a receiver, looking away from those issues, is a desperate need there in Miami, and he is a guy that just fits that team perfectly. I think he'll be amazing for Malik Willis. I'd say he's definitely more of an inside guy, but he could run the deep routes. He could do exactly what I said with Jordan Tyson, run like a bubble screen and take it to the house. But I definitely say he's more of an inside type of receiver. And I think this will just be a great pick for the Dolphins because they desperately do need a receiver.
Yeah, he's a slot guy. The funny thing about the Dolphins is, besides quarterback and running back, they could low-key take anybody. I mean, their team is very bad right now. But Mekhi Lemon makes sense, trading away, oh my God, Waddle. I don't know why I forgot his name for a second.
I say Jalen Waddle to the Broncos.
Mekhi Lemon, they need, I will say, it makes most sense that they take weapons this draft, because they need someone for Malik Willis. It's kind of crazy that they traded away Waddle now after signing a quarterback as much money as they did. So I do agree Mekhi Lemon makes the most sense. Or any receiver, whoever's there.
Yeah, because as we mentioned on previous episodes, realistically, you're setting Malik Willis up for complete failure right now with the receiving core that they have around him. So exactly, you put a guy like Malik Willis that type of money, you have to give him something to show that he could be your quarterback. I think that's going to be Mekhi Lemon. Heading to the Dallas Cowboys at pick 12, they have their offense set. They have a running back, two good receivers, a great tight end, and a great quarterback. Defense is where they have been lacking for years. You see them, they got rid of Micah Parsons, bring in Rashawn Gary now. They do another trade with the Packers. They brought in Quentin Williams, so they hope that they have that side of the ball on the line-wise set. Their linebackers have not been good, honestly. I feel like since Leighton Vander Esch, I feel like was their last elite running back. Obviously, Logan Wilson did not work out. They traded for him midseason from the Bengals last year. I'm pretty sure, I'm not going to say this is 100%, but I'm pretty sure he retired, which is just like kind of crazy because he's pretty, like, I think he's
I
29.
think he
So
did retire. I did see, I think I saw that. I think he did.
yeah, I think he retired, which is, I mean, he's 29, so like he is getting up there, but I mean, at least probably had a couple of years left in him. Has not been great though, besides the like 1 or 2 solid years he had in Cincinnati. So we have them going with CJ Allen here, I guess, is the long explanation here, which CJ Allen has been our pick for the Cowboys in every single mock draft, and I just think it makes the most sense. They desperately need that leader, captain of their defense, the green dot, to just play pass coverage, rush the passer when needed. And CJ Allen's that guy. CJ Allen is no doubt the best linebacker outside of Sonny Styles in this draft class. Obviously, I think they would love to have Sonny Styles, but at this point, he's off the board, and I think they go with the next best available option.
That was beautifully said. CJ Allen, the green dot linebacker. It's what Dallas needs. They haven't had the interior guy. They have Overshone, who shows a lot of promise when he plays, but I think he's played like
Can't stay healthy. Yeah.
8 games in the past 3 years, which is what hindered him coming into the league because he was also hurt in college as well. But yeah, CJ Allen, it makes the most sense. They need a linebacker bad. Dallas, they're always in prime position to be good, and CJ Allen can make them better. It's just if they can get over the hump, I guess.
Yeah, and hopefully this pick to get that leader on their defense will be what gets them over the hump. And a
Oh
team that
God.
is a team that is over the hump and consistently making the NFC Championship, I feel like, and obviously winning the Super Bowl, was the Los Angeles Rams at pick 13. They're very close. They have what they need. I think they could be the team that does it this year. To be honest, I think they were very close last year. Obviously, um, just couldn't beat the Seahawks. Is really what it was. And those 3 games this year that we got from them were amazing games. The Rams we have going with Spencer Fano here. We had them going Kenyon Sadiq last time. We had them, I want to say, going Jordan Tyson in the first mock draft. I know it was a receiver to like be 100% positive, and I think it just makes sense here now with the receivers off the board. I don't think Kenyon Sadiq is a huge need, as we said last time, that they do have Terrence Ferguson. They do have Tyler Higbee still. So Kenyon Sadiq would be the guy that could be the future of that position, but Terrence Ferguson, they hope, could still be, hopefully. And I think Spencer Fano just makes the most sense here. They do need a tackle. He is probably the best pure right tackle in the NFL draft this year.
Yeah, like you said, the Rams, they're very close to winning it again with Stafford. They very well could be if Stafford still plays the way he does last year. But they only have a Lark Jackson really at tackle. I mean, at right, I think they have the what's his name, McClendon,
Yeah, Warren
who's
McClendon.
projected to
Yeah.
be their starter. He could very well be. I don't know how good he is exactly, but Spencer for now, it makes the most sense for them. They have a lot. They could go anything. To be honest, they're that good of a team. They don't really have that many holes.
Yeah, and hopefully then that pick could be the reason that they end up back in the Super Bowl this year. And it is in LA. So, last time I was there, they did get there. So the Ravens now at pick 14, obviously, they did not expect to have when they traded for Max Crosby. Obviously, we saw how that ended up, and he's back on the Raiders. So they bring in Trey Hendrickson to replace that trade, and I think really, obviously, they did take Mike Green last year, but he didn't really pan out. I would say he wasn't great. Obviously, a guy that had a lot of off field issues going into the draft, but the Ravens looked away from that, and still took him. A guy that we had projected going top 3 in all of our previous mock drafts is still on the board, David Bailey. I think this would be hands down the steal of the draft if this were to occur. David Bailey just kind of fell here when we were doing this. It really would not make sense for any other team past the Jets, and if the Chiefs do trade up with the Cardinals to take an edge rusher, they have all these other teams, in our opinion, just have bigger needs. And David Bailey for the Ravens here would be an absolute steal. David Bailey, in my opinion, is the second best edge rusher in this draft behind him. I think he's a much better pure edge rusher than Arvell Reese. The Ravens could just have a lethal duo now with him and Trey Hendrickson rushing your quarterback, and it could be a very scary time for AFC North quarterbacks.
The funny thing is, it depends whatever the Jets do it too. The opposite guy could very well fall if
If
David
you
Bailey
Arvell
went
Reese,
two.
yeah,
If
yeah.
David Bailey went two, Arvell Reese very well could fall. I don't know many other teams that are that high on Arvell Reese. I know teams have him as a freak, but back to David Bailey. I don't know why I went on Arvell Reese, but it makes the most sense. Like you said, Mike Green, he's projected to be their starter. But David Bailey would be a much needed upgrade alongside Trey Hendrickson. If they didn't get Trey Hendrickson, their edge rushers would be terrible. So David Bailey, it just makes the most sense for them. They need the edge help.
Yeah, and obviously Trey Hendrickson also not the youngest, so obviously you do hope you keep this duo together
Yeah.
for a decent amount of time, but now you also are almost drafting his replacement, you can look at it as.
Yeah.
Heading to the Bucks, who did lose a guy that is getting up there in age, Mike Evans, to the San Francisco 49ers. They still have, obviously, Emeka Ibuka, Johnson, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan. They extended Kate Otten. But we have the Bucks going here, I think, for the first time in any of our mock drafts. We had them going Jamal McCoy last time, going defensively to really just sound up that defense after they lost Jamel Dean to the Pittsburgh Steelers in free agency. But Kenyon Sadiq to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is our pick here for the Bucks in this mock draft. Kenyon Sadiq is a tight end, but could very much, I think a very similar comparison is Evan Ingram. He could very much be an Evan Ingram type of tight end where you could put him in the slot. You could put him even out wide if you really wanted to. And their new OC is a guy that I think would do that. And Kenyon Sadiq was just a freak athlete at Oregon on the offensive side of the ball. I just think would be a phenomenal pick and even just help this team offensively so much. Obviously, with the loss of Mike Evans, you do have to hopefully hope Emeka Ibuka takes that jump next year and takes that wide receiver one role. But Kenyon Sadiq will just be another guy for Baker to get the ball to and really help out this offense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Zach Robinson coming from the Rams, who is known as Sean McVay's protege, I guess. He likes his two tight end sets, his 12 personnel. He also likes 11 personnel, but 12 personnel. I think the Rams ran the most, so it makes sense. Kenyon Sadiq, he's I would say more. Kate Otton's a good tight end. Kenyon Sadiq definitely offers a lot more upside when it comes down to it, and they could both be good. Especially like you said, with the loss of Mike Evans, he could play the slot, so it would make sense.
Yeah, and heading to a team that very much could have taken Kenyon Sadiq if he lasted to pick 16. The New York Jets did take Mason Taylor last year, who I actually do think is a very good tight end, but you never know if the Jets want more offensive weapons. Like we said, the Bucks obviously do have Kate Otton. It's just a guy that, if you run two tight end sets, would be amazing. The Jets, though, obviously did acquire Adonai Mitchell last year, who showed some flashes, but very much kind of a similar thing of just he's fast, not great at catching. And that's what he showed on the Colts. You just have Garrett Wilson really now on offense at receiver. I would say that's a proven guy that you can get the ball to. And with bringing in Geno Smith, you don't want to just have him only throwing to Garrett Wilson and Mason Taylor. I think Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana is the pick. The Jets will go here at 16. We did have them going with Olie Vega Ionai out of Penn State. I know I mispronounce that every time I say his name, but that is who we had them going with last time. We have them now going with Omar Cooper. We did have them going with Ty Simpson on our first mock draft. I think they think Geno Smith could be their guy this year, and then they take a quarterback in the loaded 2027 class when it comes to that position. So Omar Cooper Jr., my opinion, is easily the best wide receiver left on the board after the top three guys go. He is a guy that, very similar to my opinion, Jordan Tyson, could just do anything. You put him you put him on deep routes out, you have him run a screen pass. He can do anything and bring down the ball. I think he is such an explosive guy after the catch. You saw what he did in the national championship after the catch. And I think Omar Cooper Jr. would be a great pick here for the Jets. They are very high on him, supposedly, too. They are very much, I think, interested in taking him if he were to be available at their second pick in this draft.
Yeah, no matter who the pick is, we have Omar Cooper, which the Jets are very high on him. They're taking a weapon. They, for some reason, think Geno Smith will actually be something this year. I guess it makes no sense they're not taking a quarterback. I'm not the Jets GM. Don't ask me. But Omar Cooper, like you said, one of the best run after catch guys in college. It's something the Jets need. Garrett Wilson, it's not really the best run after catch, but polished route runner, everything. They need weapons. Yeah.
Yeah, and heading to the Detroit Lions, who have plenty of weapons on the offense side of the ball, but they are lacking a tackle now after Taylor Decker is no longer a member of the team. They currently have Larry Barum to be their right tackle, and
Very boring.
I don't think they are too excited about that. We've even heard uh, Dan Campbell say that he is debating switching Panay Sewell to left tackle because then that's why we see Larry starting at right tackle according to the step chart. But I do think that we could see them just replacing Taylor Decker and getting Monroe Freeling. Monroe Freeling, hands down, is the best tackle left after the two other top guys go. And I think it would just be a perfect replacement for Taylor Decker and could even then allow you to leave Panay Sewell at right tackle. We'll see what they do. They could put Monroe at right tackle and move Panay to left. But whatever they do, they'll have two great tackles to block for Jared Goff.
Besides Mendoza, this might be the most obvious pick in the draft. I don't see them taking anyone else other than Monroe Freeling here. They've had two visits with him so far. It just seems like he's going to be the next franchise tackle for them. There's nothing else to say, really.
Yeah, and heading to the Minnesota Vikings, who we also think will be replacing a franchise guy in Harrison Smith. We have them going with, at pick 18, who we had them going with last time. Dylan Thyman just makes so much sense for the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, they lost Cam Bynum to the Colts last year, and Cam Bynum has shown that it wasn't a one-year wonder. He was great last year as well for the Colts. So they desperately need safety help now after losing Harrison Smith, a legend for that team. And I think Dylan Diamond, hands down, is a guy that in most other drafts, I think would go earlier. I think this is just a draft where not many teams with the top picks need safeties desperately as much as they need the other positions. And Dylan Diamond, I think, will be a great pick here for Minnesota and be a great replacement for Harrison Smith.
Yeah, it's Harrison Smith 2.0. They have Metellus still. We don't know what Harrison Smith. Harrison Smith is just up in the air. We don't know if he's retiring or not. I don't even think the Vikings know if he's retiring or not. So Dynaman here, even if they keep Harrison Smith, it still makes sense. They're going to need safety help for the future because Harrison Smith, even if he plays this year, is not going to play again. There's no way. So it makes most sense here.
Yeah, and exactly. Even if Harrison Smith does come back to the Vikings, draft's 3 days away. You got to address your needs knowing what your roster is today and not thinking, oh, maybe Harrison Smith is coming. So I think that will be the pick and a great pick for their defense. And heading to Carolina, we had them taking Casey Concepcion in our last mock draft, and we have them staying with that pick. We debated Denzel Boston, but to us, it just does not make sense to take have two very tall receivers on their roster. You would then have Denzel Boston and Ted McMillan, who are very similar in skill set. Casey Concepcion is the guy that could play the slot for them, could really just run great inside slant routes. I don't think Casey Concepcion is all that, to be honest, but I do think between him and Denzel Boston, he is the better pick, no doubt. And I do think, though, he could be a guy that surprises a lot of people. I think it's a guy that is not getting talked about enough. We did just see he did post on social media, which is a bit of theatrics, I would say, but one of those things that we see some guys in the draft always do, saying, "Oh, I can't wait to get drafted. I hope whatever team takes me when they should, because you're going to regret if you pass on me." And we'll see if he's right. And we'll see if the 18 teams that didn't take him are going to be upset that the Panthers took him at 19. And heading to pick 20, we have the Dallas Cowboys going with a different corner this time. We had them going with Avian Terrell last time because Jamad McCoy was off the board to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But now that he's back on the board, I think this is a great pick for the Dallas Cowboys. Jamad McCoy has been amazing for Tennessee. Obviously, coming off the injury is why he is falling in this draft, but I think he would just be a great pick for Dallas. They are in desperate need of a corner, obviously, after losing Trayvon Diggs. We're not really losing, choosing to lose. And then Deron Bland has just not been the same since that amazing interception season. I think Jamad McCoy is just going to be the pick that just makes most sense to fill their needs.
Yeah, they need secondary help bad. Like you said, they've drafted corners that are kind of 1 year wonders. They sign him, and then they become just meh. And this is a guy who, if he didn't get hurt, probably would be a top 5 pick. He probably would have went ahead of Delane. That's how good he was his first 2 years of college. But
Yeah,
the Cowboys, what? What were you gonna say? Huh?
realistically, he easily could
Yeah,
have gone above Vince or
yeah.
Delane. It's just the injury concerns, as we said with Jordan Tyson, same situation. It just that's what happens when you get injured. You
Yeah.
do fall in the draft.
All they have is Bland and Ravel. I don't know how much they believe in Ravel, but it would make sense for them to take McCoy. Even at Flyer, for some reason, when players get injured, teams just throw them away on their draft boards, which we've seen so many players come back from injuries and still be good. So it should be a steal if he does fall this far.
Yeah, and at pick 21, which I think this would be a steal for the Pittsburgh Steelers, we had them going with Omar Cooper Jr. in our last mock draft, but obviously no longer on the board. We have them going with Oli Vega Ionai, who I definitely mispronounced again, but I think that will be the pick realistically. They do need a guard desperately. They did lose Isaac Samalu in free agency, and Spencer Henderson is currently slated to be a starting guard for them. I mean, this would be an absolute steal for the Steelers. You're getting hands down the best guard in the class, and honestly, a guy who could do a lot earlier if a team just wants to take a guard in the future. So I do believe that this would be a phenomenal pick for the Steelers at 21.
Yeah, with most of the receivers off the board, it makes sense for them to go guard. If there are receivers available, I do expect them to at least taking a look at a receiver. But
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know how to say his name. I'm even gonna try to pronounce it, but he makes sense for them.
Yeah, and especially being in Pittsburgh, they might go with that skill position type of pick to just have the excitement, obviously, because you do want to see an exciting pick definitely in your hometown. But I think a guard, even though it's not exciting, makes the most sense here for the Steelers. And a team that will also be drafting, according to us, something that just makes the most sense for them. We had the Chargers going with Akeem Mesidor in our last mock draft. And it was really to think about that he would be playing alongside Khalil Mack, and this would be a great duo for the Chargers. And obviously, Khalil Mack not going to be around for much longer, most likely getting up there in age. It would just be a great guy for him to learn from and play with. However, we have them saying we like what we have because we have Khalil Mack and we have some other guys on the opposite side. They desperately need interior D-line help, and Peter Woods could be the guy to solve that for them. So we have them going with probably their biggest need, I would say, on the defensive side of the ball here with Peter Woods.
Yeah, it makes sense. They have T.I. Tart. I don't know if I say his first name, but he was on the Titans. Chargers picked him up. He's very good against the run. So, and then you have Dalvin Thompson, who's also really good against the run. But Peter Woods is good at getting to the quarterback as defensive tackle. He's a fast defensive tackle who's also big. He's just not as good against the run. And Dalvin Tomlinson, he's not their future on the D line. So Peter Woods makes sense for them.
Yeah, and a team who we had taking Cassius Howell last mock draft, the Philadelphia Eagles, now up. I think we'll go with Akeem Macedonia as the best edge left. Obviously, they were not able to take him last time because he's off the board. This would just be the most obvious pick for the Eagles. Obviously, losing Jalen Phillips to the Carolina Panthers, they now have a huge hole at edge rusher. And Akeem Mesidor will fill that hole. And to be honest, obviously, we have Ruben Bain, Arvell Reese, and David Bailey going ahead of him. But honestly, Akeem Mesidor could end up being, I'm not going to say the best because I think Bain is better than him, but I think he could be better than Arvell and David Bailey. I
It
think
wouldn't
Akeem
surprise
Mesidor
me.
is a guy getting overlooked in this draft, and the Eagles getting him at 23 could just be one of those Eagle picks that everybody's like, wow, how did the NFL let him fall to the Eagles?
I hate how good the Eagles draft. Like normally, whoever they draft turns out to be a stud. And Akeem Mesidor is a guy who, like you said, legit could be a stud. He was a stud on the defense alongside Ruben Bain in Miami. They need edge help. They really just have Nolan Smith, who actually came into his own this year. I think they have Jalix Hunt too, who's expected to start. But if they don't, they're going to take edge. So Mesidor just make it. It would like you said. It wouldn't surprise me if he's also one of the best edge rushers coming out of the draft. To be honest.
Yeah, and heading to the offensive side of the ball, the Cleveland Browns back up at pick 24. We have them going with Caden Proctor like we did in our last mock draft. They brought together a bunch of guys in free agency when it comes to the offensive line position, and typically that doesn't really go great for teams because it's a lot of guys that just haven't played together, and you block differently. And obviously a coach though will hopefully try to mold that O line into a unit, but I think Caden Proctor, who we had them going with last time, just makes sense here. You get a tackle for Shador. You already took the weapon for Shador. You got to protect your quarterback before you can even use that weapon, and I think Caden Proctor would be a great pick for them. Yeah, he's the best tackle left on board.
Yeah, like you said, they kind of rebuilt their O line. It's kind of hard to rebuild all throughout free agency and everything to get the O line that you want. And their left tackle, I think, is expected to be DeJuan Jones, who doesn't have that much playing time, really. They're just kind of expecting something comes out of him. So, Caden Proctor, getting a guy that you know could be your starting tackle for the future, is definitely something the Browns need to look at. Like you said, whether it's Shador or they take someone else or the future quarterback they have, he has to be protected.
Yeah, and if you don't have protection for a quarterback, you can't use the weapons that you're getting him. So it just would not make sense to not go with this pick here. And to the Bears at pick 25, they really could go anywhere. We had them going with Emmanuel McNeil Warren last time. However, we think this time they would go with Keldrick Folk. Their D line, they have Montez Sweat off the edge, but besides that, that's all they got really as an edge rusher. And I think Keldrick Folk would be a great guy to have opposite Montez Sweat and could easily be the pick that we see the Bears go with.
I think their only projected starter is Montez Sweat, so it just makes sense. They did sign the Dio. I don't know his last Odedibi, whatever his last name is. I'm so sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I know I did. It's most likely going to be an edge rusher because it's like I just said, they don't really have anyone else, and I expect the defense to be just as good as it was last year. They did lose key guys, but they still have a lot of studs in the defense. This will make their defense even better.
Yeah, and this would just make a defense that was amazing last year just even better, and a defense that I would say struggled last year in the Buffalo Bills. Coming up next at pick 26, we had them going with Keldrick Folk, who is no longer on the board. And now we just have two edge rushers flying off at the same time. We have Cassius Howell going to the Bills. Cassius Howell, Akeem Mesidor, and Keldrick Folk have really just been kind of to one team to the other in our previous mock drafts, and that's kind of how it's going here. I think Cassius Howell, though, would be a great pick here for the Bills. I think just, they brought in Bradley Chubb, but that's not a long-term solution. They have Greg Rousseau, and Greg Rousseau and Cassius Howell could be a long-term solution for them at edge, and I think this would just be a great duo to get started with in Buffalo.
Yeah, Buffalo's transitioning to a 3-4. They've normally been a 4-3 nickel type of defense for a while. I think they're starting to realize they had to switch something. I think they have Jim Leonard from Indianapolis. Did he come from, I believe, right? Did he come from Indianapolis? Or no, Denver.
I don't know
Or
for
was it
sure,
Denver?
so I'm not going to back you up on that one.
It might have been Denver, actually. I don't know, but he's a 3-4 specialist. You need edge rushers in a 3-4 defense, especially guys that can rotate. So getting someone like Cassius Howell, huge for the future. Like you said, they have Greg Rousseau. They're brought in Bradley Chubb. Bradley Chubb is nothing special anymore. He was at one point, but yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, and heading to San Francisco, we had them going with Monroe Freeling in our last mock draft because the Lions went with Spencer Fano in our last mock draft, but no longer either of them are on the board. So we have them going with Blake Miller. Realistically, they just need to take a tackle, and that is the best guy left. And I just think that's what they have to do. They desperately need a tackle. Obviously, a guy like Brock Purdy has not been really that healthy if you really look at his career, and it's because he doesn't have the best blocking. And I think if you look at the Trent Williams situation, it just makes sense. They need to get ahead of that and make sure they have a guy to replace him. And I think Blake Miller could be that guy.
This is the same situation as the Vikings, really, with the Edelman and Harrison Smith. They don't know what's going on with Trent Williams. They would love to have him back, obviously, but they need a future. They need future help at tackle. I don't think McKivitz is okay. So even if Trent Williams comes back, he could start on the right side. It could be a battle, him and Blake Miller. But yeah, we don't know what's going to happen with Trent Williams. You got to go off what, like you said, the draft is 3 days away, so you can't go off ifs.
Exactly. And this would just be the best solution to something that they need to fix now. And heading to Houston, we have them taking somebody that has not gone in the first round in either of our previous 2 mock drafts. We have them going with Christian Miller from Georgia, and plays inside. And I think this would be a interesting pick. I definitely could see it being a overdraft, but it's a need. They need interior D line. We did have them going with Blake Miller, who's no longer on the board, as a solid guy to bring in. Obviously, they do have Braden Smith at tackle, but they do have this is a name I'm not going to get right either. I'm going to just say Ursary at the other side of tackle. He was their draft pick last year, so you hopefully are going to see him develop, is what they're probably thinking. And I think going with Christian Miller is a position of need for them in the interior D line. They have everything else on defense, and I think this would be a solid pick for them in the late first round.
Yeah, they really have everything on defense. He would be good for them. They have Shelvin Rankins, who's more of a run stopper. He's more high twitchy, Christian Miller, when it comes to getting to the passer. He's a lot quicker than other guys. Like you said, Katie McDonald also could have been an option. But Christian Miller, he's just quick for a defensive tackle. It's just something that fits what the Texans do, is get to the quarterback, and he can help do that.
Exactly. And now heading to Arizona, they're back up on the clock after making that trade with the Chiefs. Obviously, we spoke about the Jacoby Brissett situation, and I think they get ahead of that, as we just kind of talked about with Blake Miller, with Dylan Diamond. You don't want to have a question mark at quarterback. It's the worst position to have a question mark at, and we think they'd go Ty Simpson because of that. They are very interested in him, supposedly. They could easily take him if they make that trade with the Chiefs, because I don't think they would take him at 3. That would be, I think Arizona would burn down. I think that would be a insane pick. But if they do trade out of 3 and get that second late round pick, which we have them doing here, and now getting Francis Mayoga at 9 and then Ty Simpson at 29, you get a guy that I think has shown promise in college. Ty Simpson is really a quarterback that I think could maybe play up to, let's say, I'll say maybe Kirk Cousins. I'll say that's kind of my comparison to him. Like he could just be like that quarterback that gets things done, but just could never actually get the full job done, obviously going to win the Super Bowl and winning multiple playoff games. But I think Ty Simpson would be a solid guy to put in behind Jacoby Brissett if he is still on the Cardinals. And even if he is, then he learns from Jacoby Brissett for a year, starts next year, or even if Jacoby Brissett gets benched, you put in Ty Simpson. I think it's just a guy that they like a lot and would be a smart pick for them if they end up with a second pick in this first round.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if Ty Simpson goes a lot earlier than people expect. A lot of people have him closer to Mendoza than people think. But yeah, it just makes sense. I mean, like you said, even if they get the contract situation with Brissett handled, he's not their future starter. And when you're resetting everything like they're doing this year, like getting rid of Kyler completely, you got to at least find the guy earlier rather than later. And getting a guy like Ty Simpson, who's not proven at Alabama, he was good in the 1 year he started, but I feel like he has a lot left in the tank.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people do, like Dan Orlovsky, have him pretty close to Mendoza. And to be honest, this is a quarterback class that's just so weird because you have a guy like Mendoza who is the home run #1 overall pick. But you look at previous drafts like last year, he would not have even been close to going number one overall. You would have had like Will Howard in this draft technically would have gotten number one overall if you look at it. His season last year was better than Mendoza's Heisman season this year. So it's a very interesting QB class, and we'll really see what happens with Ty Simpson and Mendoza as they enter the league. And heading back to Miami, back up on the clock with their second pick they acquired from the Jalen Waddle trade. They did lose Minkah Fitzpatrick. Not lose, they chose to lose him. They traded him to the New York Jets right before free agency started. I think they address that need, and they go get Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. We have Emmanuel McNeil-Warren going to the Bears in our last mock draft, but obviously Keldrick Folk is their pick this time. I think this would just be a great pick for the Dolphins. McNeil-Warren is a guy that I think is also getting overlooked in this draft. It's a guy out of Toledo, which we've seen them produce solid prospects in the past, and I think would just be a perfect pick for a team that is desperately in need of a safety.
Like I said before, Dolphins are desperately in the need of anything. But safety help is huge here. He's the best safety, arguably up there with Dylan Dineman. And Toledo, like you said, has produced. Recently, they produced Kenyon Mitchell. So there's something going right in Toledo. So it makes sense that he would produce in the NFL.
Yeah, and now for the final two picks, the past two Super Bowl teams, obviously with Seattle being at 32 for winning the Super Bowl. We have the New England Patriots at 31 first, going with Caden McDonald out of Ohio State, and then the Seahawks going with Jadarian Price, as we had them going with him in our last mock draft. For the Patriots, Caden McDonald, we had them going with Peter Woods last time. They need interior D-line help, no doubt. They have the edge rushers, even though they lost Caleb Chase on. They have Draymond Jones and Harold Landry. So I don't think they're going to look there, especially that most of the, my opinion, first-round grade edge rushers are off the board. So McDonald would just make sense here for them. And then Jadarian Price, as I said last mock draft, this is your Kenneth Walker replacement. Zach Charbonnet has shown that he cannot be the bell cow by himself. He needs something else, there in the backfield with him. And I think Jadarian Price could be that guy for Seattle and be a great replacement for Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, Jadarian Price just makes the most sense for Seattle, a team that obviously won the Super Bowl. They're not looking as good losing Kenneth Walker. Like you said, Charbonnet has not really proven he could be a workhorse, so Jadarian Price could be that good 1-2 punch. And Caden McDonald for the Patriots provides just an interior just demon to match with Milton Williams on an already good defense. So it'll be surprising to see what happens though. That's our mock. That's our last mock.
Yeah, that is the final mock draft Monday for the podcast. Obviously, the draft being 3 days away in Pittsburgh. You can find this mock draft on all of our socials on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Comment down below what you think we got right, what you think was completely wrong, and we will find out on Thursday what actually is true. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Obviously, a very large focus on the draft this podcast because that is what's coming up this week. And the biggest news really was the Dexter Lawrence trade. And to end it here, for one last spitball, as we always do, we are each going to leave you with one last spitball and give you our favorite 3 prospects in this draft. Me, I'm going to go with Jordan Tyson, Ruben Bain, and I'm going to say Kenyon Sadiq. Those are my top 3 guys in this draft class that I think no doubt will be studs when they get to the league.
Ooh. Let's go. I'm going to go Mansour Delane, Caleb Downs, and I'm a big believer. I'm going to say Ty Simpson. I feel like he'll shock.
Hey, if you get that right, people are going to come back to this episode and say you said it. So that is it for the final episode of the podcast before the NFL draft. As I just said, you could find this mock draft on all of our socials at our handle at PodSpitBallin. That is at POD Spitballin. That is it for this episode, and as we always leave you, keep spitballing, everybody.